Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us here at the latest news from across the continent of Africa. And we start from Sudan. Sporadic gunfire rang out in parts of the Sudanese capital Khartoum on Tuesday despite a U.S. brokered agreement between the warring generals to cease fire for 72 hours to pave way for talks and a more lasting truce. 10 days of heavy fighting, including airstrikes and artillery barrages, have killed hundreds of people, many of them civilians, and left some neighboring neighborhoods of Greater Khartoum in ruins. But in other areas, there has been a reduction in the intensity of fighting since foreign governments scrambled road convoys, aircrafts and ships to get their nationals out since the weekend. Witnesses have confirmed video posted on social media showed bewildered civilians walking down one street in Khartoum North, where virtually every building was bombed out and smoke was still rising from the scorching rains. Kenya now says Russian and Gulf countries' involvement in Sudan's politics is hurting the search for peace. Raising concerns that only the African Union had expressed in vague terms last week. Speaking at a press availability in the U.S. with his host Anthony Blinken, Kenya's Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Alfred Mutua indicated that external interference has made it difficult to reach lasting peace in Sudan, expressing the same sentiments as those of the AU last week. But the Kenyan top diplomat fingered Russia and some Gulf countries of taking sides as the continent pursues a return to civilian rule in Sudan. Dr. Mutua is in the U.S. to discuss the U.S.-Kenya strategic partnership, a deal meant to guide how future trade and economic relations with the U.S. will run, including adhering to conservation and climate change demands. The White House said on Monday that the U.S. is helping from afar as thousands of Americans left behind in Sudan seek to escape fighting in the East African nation after the U.S. Embassy evacuated all its diplomat personnel over the weekend and shut down. President Joe Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, defended the decision not to keep U.S. forces or diplomats in Sudan to help its citizens evacuate, as several U.S. allies did, as the U.S. has often done in conflict zones in the past. Instead, Sullivan told reporters that the U.S. was now remotely assisting Americans trying to flee the country by road. U.S. assistance on Monday included helping Americans link up with convoys of foreigners now attempting to make it through fighting towards safety on Sudan's eastern border. The U.S. also is placing intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance assets over the route from the capital Khartoum to the country's main seaport, the Port of Sudan, to scope out safety threats. Sullivan said. The U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said he had helped broker a 72-hour ceasefire to begin late Monday. It would extend a normal truce coinciding with a Muslim holiday that brought almost no reduction in fighting, but helped to facilitate the evacuation. Sullivan said convoys with Americans in them were beginning to arrive at Port of Sudan in the Red Sea, and the U.S. was working with neighboring countries to get them to safety over the border. And still staying with Sudan, the South Sudanese government says about 9,000 people have crossed its border since the beginning of the conflict in the neighboring Sudan 10 days ago. Foreign Minister Deng Deng told the BBC that most of the arrivals were returning home, about 6,000 people. About 3,000 of the new arrivals are a mix of Sudanese and citizens of other countries, including Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Somalia, many of them diplomats. And Deng said President Salva Kiir has been in touch with both Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and RSF paramilitary leader Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo to call for an end to the conflict. South Sudan gained independence from Sudan 12 years ago. There is a large South Sudanese population in Sudan, and oil from South Sudan goes through Sudanese territory to get to Port Sudan on the Red Sea. So that means South Sudan is really going to feel the effects of this war now currently ongoing in Sudan. We head over to Libya. The bodies of 34 illegal migrants who drowned while trying to reach Europe have been recovered from the coast of western Libya in 5 days, the Libyan Red Crescent LRC said on Wednesday. The LRC reported 6 bodies found on the shores of Sabrata, 70 kilometers west of the capital Tripoli, and 17 more on Sunday. Images posted on Facebook show LRC volunteers carrying bodies in black bags and depositing them in the ambulances. The NGO Alam Phone, a group of volunteers that runs a hotline for migrants in difficulty, had claimed on Wednesday to have received a distress call from migrants on board an inflatable, a boat that was sinking off the coast of Libya, which with about 100 passengers on board. The NGO had claimed to have tried to contact the so-called Libyan Coast Guard, but in vain. The chaos that followed the fall of Muammar Gaddafi regime in 2011 has made Libya a preferred route for tens of thousands of migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, Arab countries and South Asia seeking to reach Europe via the Italian coast. Libya is regularly criticized by NGOs for the mistreatment of migrants. Clandestine crossing attempts, often deadly, are also increasing from neighboring Tunisia. On Monday, the Tunisian Coast Guard announced that it had found 31 bodies of sub-Saharan migrants decomposing and washed up on the shore. Dozens of migrants are missing after their boat sank off the coast of Tunisia. In recent weeks, the authorities also announced on Monday that 5 migrants from sub-Saharan Africa had drowned in 2 separate shipwrecks off Tunisia in recent hours. Head over to Nigeria, and the president-elect Asiwaju Bola Tinubu on Monday returned to the country after holidaying in Paris, France for 34 days. Tinubu, who was accompanied by his wife Remy and son Say, arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport at 4:40 p.m. to an arousing welcome by all Progressive Congress governors, National Assembly leaders and scores of party loyalists. The ex-Lagos State governor departed the country on March 21st, a few weeks after he was declared the winner of the presidential election. According to a statement by his media aide, Tunde Rahman, the trip would enable Tinubu to rest and plan his transition program ahead of his inauguration in May 29th. And in Equatorial Guinea, a new provincial death toll from the Marburg virus epidemic that has been raging for more than 3 months in Equatorial Guinea has risen to 12, according to a new health ministry report confirmed to AFP news agencies on Monday. The last death recorded by the authorities was due to the epidemic of this virus, cousin of Ebola, and almost as deadly as it was on April 11th. As of April 21st, there has been 17 cases and 12 deaths since the beginning of the epidemic, the Ministry of Health said in a report representing the epidemiological data of the Marburg virus disease. A total of 116 contact cases are being monitored from 385 on April 11th, and 1,427 people have been contact cases since the beginning of the epidemic, the same source said. Cases of hemorrhagic fever have spread from the eastern province of Kaintem, where the first known deaths occurred in January 7th, to Bata, the economic capital of this small Central African country, where the majority of confirmed positive cases, 11 out of 17, are concentrated, according to the authorities. Nearly a month ago, the World Health Organization (WHO) called on Equatorial Guinea to report cases of Marburg virus because fears of more widespread contamination than previously reported. The UN agency was alarmed by a potential large-scale epidemic that could affect neighboring Gabon and Cameroon. The Marburg virus is transmitted to humans by fruits, bats, and is spread to humans through direct contact with the body fluids of infected persons or with surfaces and materials. The case fatality rate can be as high as 88%. There is no provided vaccine or antiviral treatment for the virus. However, supportive care, oral or intravenous, dehydration and treatment of specific symptoms increases the chances of survival. And that is the latest news from across Africa. I want to take us back to the latest from this developing story in Khartoum. I would not even speak on the Kenya's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In diplomatic circles, he will be considered the top diplomat from Kenya, the minister, the CS for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Mutua, who is in the US, and I think he called out Russia and other Gulf countries of aiding what is going on in Sudan. I don't know if that was a very wise thing to do on the part of Dr. Alfred Mutua. I'm not sure. I'm not sure because of Kenya's position and what we are and the role that we play in this region. Sometimes I think when there are matters that concerns countries around here, then it requires a lot of wisdom and in how this is handled, especially issues to do with in relations to other countries and in diplomacy. So that is what he said. Dr. Alfred Mutua called out Russia and these Gulf countries for their involvement and the fueling of this conflict in Sudan. Yes, he did that yesterday, so I will not get into too much details of that. But still, speaking on Sudan, let me just give us the latest what is happening. And of course, from Cyprus, we've been waiting for an RAF plane which left Khartoum to land in Cyprus. There is currently a UK military aircraft on the way, but people are not sure. No, UK was announced just a few hours ago that it was sending help for its citizens who are stuck in Sudan. So I think this is what is happening, and a lot of people are now scared, and concerns are being raised by family and friends of people who are stuck. And I can see that the embassy isn't answering desperate Kenyan students consider fleeing to border. They're trying, I guess, to get help right now. A lot of embassies have closed, so maybe even the different nationalities who are stuck in Sudan right now will find it difficult to reach their embassies because there was a abrupt closing of these embassies because of the safety reasons. So this is not just I think it's people all over the world who were the citizens who were in Sudan right now. So a few countries have already started this evacuation process, which others started 3 days ago, others intensified 2 days ago, and we're seeing others just starting now. And the UN says that up to 270,000 people could flee the fighting in Sudan into neighboring countries, South Sudan and Chad. The UN Refugee Agency in Chad say 20,000 people had already entered the country, and they expect as many as 100,000 refugees. Its counterpart in South Sudan says that most likely scenario is for 45,000 refugees to cross the border, as well as the return of 125,000 South Sudanese who are forced to leave Sudan due to the violence. Separately, the UN's humanitarian office says it has been forced to cut back its activities in parts of Sudan due to intense fighting. 5 aid workers have been killed since April 15th, and 2 UN agencies who lost staff, the International Organization for Migration and the World Food Programme, suspended their activities. So I'm just giving you this news as it is coming in. And the BBC now has been tracking the RAF flights in and out of Sudan this morning using a plane tracking. This is the flight from Britain that is meant to get the Britons who are still stuck in Sudan. So they have been tracking this plane, and we cannot let our people die. This is according to Sudan's Doctors Union. So they are trying to do their best to make sure that even in the chaos and in the madness, the people who have been injured and those who desperately needs this medical care, they're still able to offer. So that is what the Sudan Doctors Union is saying right now. So I think they're appealing for help. Remember, hospitals who have been attacked. I think since the beginning of these fights, a lot of hospitals have been attacked, and people have been injured in thousands right now. And so they desperately need this help and medical attention. And so the Doctors Union in Sudan has vowed to stay put and to ensure that they are able to do what they can to save lives and to treat people. And colleagues, one of the doctors is saying that colleagues are working flat out, standing for as long as 20 hours in the surgical theater to support patients, and the medical community is also suffering psychologically. Can you imagine standing 20 hours, maybe removing bullets or whatever it is that is it's going on there in Sudan? And I was just reading one of the stories here of somebody who was just saying that I think she's from Sudan, and she was saying that nobody ever expected this to take place in Sudan. What? Have you not been listening to the news and reading and seeing and just, well, maybe not for everybody, but from all the signs, everything that has been happening in Sudan for the past over a year, it was pointing towards exactly what is happening right now, and how stakeholders could not see these red flags and come in quickly and try to mitigate this before it got to the levels that it has gotten. That is something that baffles me. All pointers was that this was going to happen, was bound to happen if action was not taken and these generals were not brought to order. This was bound to happen. It was hurtling. It has been hurtling since 2021. We saw that. So this was bound to happen. And so for those who have been caught up, now they're surprised and they're saying they never expected this to happen. First of all, how do you have an army in a country and then you have another parallel army which also wants to flex its muscles and act as if it has the same powers as the army? How do you have that? How do you think you can have these parallel centers of military power in a country and then expect that you will have some peace and tranquility? First of all, where in the world have you ever heard about that? Second, you have an army that is part and parcel of the day-to-day running of the country's economy and other sectors and has been in power for a very long time. And you have a section of the international community and other people and other players and actors who are pushing this army to get out of the way and to allow for a citizen leadership in Sudan. You really expected that to happen? I mean, everything that has been happening in Sudan was just pointing towards where we are today, and which is quite unfortunate. And these signs were there. We could absolutely see the overstay in army in power. Anybody who had some sense knew this was going to be problematic for Sudan and its people. And as they wage war against each other, now the civilians have to suffer. These external factors, because right now we can't, I mean, it's quite clear that there's a lot of external interest that is being represented in this conflict outside of the power struggles between these two generals, which these power struggles are also being incited by external factors. Surely this was expected. This is exactly what we expected. This is exactly what we expected when they removed the Prime Minister, Abdallah Hamdok. This is exactly what we expected in February when Hamdan, when he came out and he declared that it was a mistake when the military removed Hamdok, it was a mistake. And I said, there's no way, because now the army is speaking from two sides of its mouth, and this was a problem. And so that crack already was problematic. So anybody that was following this chaos in Sudan, anybody that has been following the events and what has been transpiring in Sudan since the ousting of Omar al-Bashir was expecting what is happening right now to happen. Exactly what is happening now to happen. And these external factors, some of them that are now quick to remove their people from Sudan, and they know very well that they are part of that problem today. So they know they can go back. They have other countries to run back to. They can gather. They in a haste to remove their citizens from Sudan because their countries are safe and are stable. Now the chaos that they have contributed in causing in Sudan, the people of Sudan are left to deal with it. But they have run very safely back to their countries. They're frantic. They're making frantic efforts and plans to remove their people from Sudan. But the Sudanese are left there to bear the brunt of this unnecessary conflict that is ongoing now, claiming lives and destroying properties and just turning their lives around in the most horrible way possible. And these are some of the lessons that Africa, we must learn the hard way. When we agree to be a center of proxy wars, when we agree to joke around with powers that are just out there to destroy what we have and to bring their mess into our countries and allow that mess to play out, these are the lessons that we should be learning. This is how things turn out, and not for the best. Not for the best. The Sudanese are not benefiting right now. Okay, so in case you're wondering who is fighting in Sudan, it's a bit complicated story, but not very complicated, but I think we all know that right now. Now, since the coup in 2021, the ousted long leader, Omar al-Bashir, Sudan has been run by a council of generals, okay, led by 2 military men. At the center of this dispute, we do have General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the head of the armed forces, the official army of Sudan, and he is in effect the country's president. But he has been having a deputy, and who is also the lead of the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, better known as Hemedi, who also have been wielding almost similar powers, if not more, than his boss. We've been seeing that, okay? And so the RSF, in case you're wondering, they're a paramilitary unit who were officially formed in 2013. Since then, General Dagalo has turned the 100,000 initially. They were actually formed in 2003, but they were Janjaweed then. They were baptized in 2013, and now they have, Dagalo has made sure he's turned into a strong militia with over 100,000 of these generals there, of these army officials there. And it has become a force, and some see this as a source of the country's instability. Absolutely, absolutely 100%. You cannot purport to have 2 armies in a country, because this is what this essentially is. This paramilitary militia or whatever, they feel like they are the army of the country. And that's why they've been wanting and claiming and insisting they have to be integrated into the national army. And Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the general, has not been welcoming that idea. So the main striking points are plans to integrate the RSF. That is one of the sticking points, one of the most problematic issues that has brought partly Sudan to where it is today. And who will then lead the new force? General Burhan wants this to happen within 2 years. General Dagalo would prefer it to happen in 10 years. So they still want to drag this out. And you know why? Because of the interest that they present, because of some of the countries that have chosen to take sides and support each side of these generals. It's not for the good of Sudan. It's not for the good of the people of Sudan. What is happening right now, these decisions they're making, they're holding brief on behalf of certain powers and countries, and it's quite unfortunate. And back to UK, evacuation efforts now. And UK Foreign Secretary James cleverly, as I said there earlier, said that the situation in Sudan remains dangerous, volatile and unpredictable. And he says it is impossible to know how long a ceasefire would last. And I think at the beginning of this bulletin, I told you that there's, even with the 72-hour ceasefire that was announced midnight earlier today, that did not hold. There's still some gunfires that are being heard in different parts of Khartoum. So it is, there's no telling. And from the World Health Organization, speaking to the media, said that there are high risk of biological hazard after one of the sites involved in the fierce fighting in Sudan seized a laboratory. See now, here. And then there's been sporadic gunfire in Sudan despite the new truce. So even the truce that was announced just hours back has not been, nobody is respecting that. Nobody is respecting that. And, the people who are still, other foreign nationals who are still in Sudan, they're being told to prepare to rush to the airport, especially from those from the UK. So it is a developing, scenario, and this is a developing story. And so our job here is to keep updating you as the news keeps trickling in. That number of other sub-Saharan migrants who have 34 bodies that have been, recovered from the shores of Libya. I don't know until when we need to keep counting these bodies. the Libyan coastline, at the Tunisia's coastline, and other countries in that enclave where the sub-Saharan African young men and women try to cross over to the other side to seek for greener pastures. And not just sub-Saharan Africans. There are also others from Asia and others from South America. And so it's just a mixture of this. But majority of them are from sub-Saharan Africa. I don't know until when we'll keep counting these bodies that African Union will decide this is an emergency. This is something that deserves our attention as a continent. This is something that our heads of state should actually sit down and discuss and see how do we minimize, how do we cooperate the countries, especially that are used as these routes to get this, they used to get where they want to go in the Mediterranean. There should be an urgent meeting. There should be an urgent meeting to address this. 34 illegal migrants drowned in the Libyan coastline. 2 days ago, I think Wednesday, the LRC, that is the Libyan Red Crescent, reported 6 bodies found in the shores of Sabrata, 70 kilometers. That was on Wednesday last week. Right now, 17 more on Sunday are found. 17 more on Sunday, 6 last, and yesterday, 34 more bodies. Until when? And there are others whose boat capsized and had over 100 passengers. Nobody can account for these people. Have we normalized these kinds of things, or do we have other things that deserves our attention, or we just have enough to deal with right now in the continent, that human life or deaths of our people from these shipwrecks and for these desperate journeys and for the bad conditions that we have created in our countries that has made these young people to want to leave their countries and access other countries that they're not even wanted, but even with that, they feel they stand a better chance in surviving over there. This should be a wake-up call. Of course, there are other migrants from the Arab countries and from South Asia, but majority of them are from sub-Saharan Africa. This should be a wake-up call, and I think it's about time that African Union called for a meeting to address the issue of this illegal immigration and the deaths that we keep reporting from the Mediterranean. I think it's about time. All right, I think I will stop there for this afternoon, because I think every news item this afternoon is just depressing. Okay, so we will catch up again here tomorrow, God willing, and see if at all there will be some respect of that ceasefire in Sudan, which has already been violated, but hopefully maybe they will agree to another one. I don't know, but I'll be here to let you know what's happening. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.